to our 107th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, November 19th, 2019, where I am your host, Matthew Lukens. On the docket tonight, we have a Michigan recap, a Louisiana Tech recap, and a Purdue preview. But here with me tonight, as always, is the one and only Nathan Krishnan. And then to my right, I guess, yeah, it is my right. Over here on the screen, we have the great Andrew is in the chat as well for talking about football and basketball tonight. So we're going to start everything off with the Michigan recap. So this weekend, I'm sure you are aware, the Michigan Wolverines came into town in a highly anticipated matchup and demolished our Hoosiers 39-14 in what was a abysmal game. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Nathan, to start things off. What were your overall thoughts on the game?
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for listening in this episode tonight. Thanksgiving week, everyone hopefully is taking it easy.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a fun holiday. I like Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving's good.
This is an important time for IU football and for basketball. Archie Miller said there's no Thanksgiving in college basketball, so we've got to. There's turkey time can wait. Maybe I wonder if he celebrates it in March or maybe like May. I bet Thanksgiving in Archie's household is in May at some point.
Instead of Christmas is in July, he has Thanksgiving in June.
That's right. Yeah. He does one of those things. But no, as far as the Indiana Michigan football game, look, it was fun for about a quarter and a half, and then Michigan just cranked it up another notch. And look, Indiana, if they were celebrating being a 7-3 football team, well, they received a reality check very quickly in that second quarter and in the second half for sure in Bloomington last week. It's interesting. I'm trying to think if it was IU playing poorly or Michigan playing well. I think I'm leaning towards, hey, Michigan just played really well, but it's one of those things where I saw IU play at Penn State. And I saw IU play in Bloomington against Michigan, and it looked like two completely different football teams. Something happened there in the second quarter where IU all of a sudden just lost their spark, their mojo. Now, they're dealing with some stuff, right? IU did not have Whop Philyor. We did not see him on the field on Saturday, and Ty Freifogel, another dependable, reliable receiver, didn't play. And there were other injuries during the game as well. I think all of Hoosier Nation expected Indiana to play Michigan close, like they have previously. Andrew, what did you see? What did you see from that game on Saturday? I guess let me ask you this: do you think it was Michigan playing really well or IU playing really poorly?
A little bit of both. You can't come out and like the second quarter or whatever halftime at the way they did. It got off to a great start, like we've seen IU teams in the past against top 15 opponents. And then just kind of downfall from there like we've seen in the past. A lot of it was the defense. IU's defense gave up a lot of big plays to Shea Patterson and his passing attack. Patterson threw for 366 yards and 5 touchdowns on the day. And a lot of that was just defenders were left on an island, couldn't get a consistent pass rush. And that's going to happen if you can't get a pass rush with your front four defenders on the D-line and you have to send extra blitzers from the middle or whatnot. And that leaves guys like Tywan Mullen out to dry. But Tywan did have a good game. I think it was Peoples-Jones who made a really nice catch. Patterson made a great throw. But it was just a tough game to watch after a first quarter where I'm sitting there watching like, okay, this could be it. But like many games in the past, it didn't happen.
Yeah. I thought whoever was covering Ronnie Bell most of the game did a great job. And I think it was a combination of everybody. But I think Tywan Mullen was mostly on him because he was Michigan's leading receiver going into the game. He only had 1 catch for 6 yards this game. And if I had told me that before this game, I would have been like, oh, so we, did what I thought we were going to do and won the game. But then we had Nico Collins go off for 165 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Shea definitely played a lot better than he has played, especially in the beginning of the year this season. And to echo your point, Nathan, I think Michigan is peaking, and I think we played them at the exact wrong time. If we had played them at the beginning of the year, there's a very good chance we would have won that game.
Well, could you imagine if we swapped Michigan and Michigan State on our schedule?
Yes.
As far as Indiana is concerned, Indiana could have just one loss at this point, maybe two if you include Penn State. I mean, sometimes timing does matter. You're absolutely right, Matt.
Yeah, so Michigan's definitely peaking, which makes this Ohio State-Michigan game on Saturday very interesting. It's going to be fun to watch. But I don't need to sell that for ESPN. They're already doing that.
It's not even on. It's on Fox.
It's on Fox. Whatever. But they're selling it this weekend. So whoever's playing is selling it. So Fox. I don't need to sell it for them. But at one point, we were up 14-7, and I'm sitting there like, okay, like we might actually have a chance at this. You know, I like to talk a lot of game about, hey, I think we can beat this team. And I think every year I go out and say some stupid upset in the preview just to like say so. But this year I really thought we had a chance against Michigan. And 14-7, I'm like, oh, I might be looking right. And then they went and scored. Oh, I'm trying to do quick math. 25 points unanswered.
32.
30. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess they're announced. Yeah, 32. I can do math. 32 points unanswered, and it's like, oh, and like you said, the defense just couldn't get a pass rush. Can we boil it down to that? Is like that what really cost us the game, or do you have any other insight into our defensive lapse, Andrew?
No, not really. IU plays a lot of man coverage. That's known throughout the Big Ten, and I think it was Tom Allen or one of the coaches said in the press conference on Monday that IU's playing well. They're going to get teams' best shots, and they fell on the wrong end. Like Nathan said, wrong time of playing Michigan. I just think that was a really big cause of it. So hopefully they can shape up the defense because they have another really good wide receiver coming when they play next week against Purdue. So
yeah, they do.
And well,
the one that we recruited too.
I don't want to oversimplify things, but that game on Saturday just kind of felt like a blue blood program with a bunch of 5-star recruits just kind of showed up and eventually wore down Indiana. I mean, you can play as hard as you want with the talent that you have, but we even saw it last year in the Big Ten championship game between Ohio State and Northwestern. At some point, talent and speed and size and strength wins out, and when IU was on offense, Peyton Ramsey was constantly under pressure. The receivers were having a tough time getting open. The running game was at 3 yards a carry. And then on the flip side, Michigan was dominating in the passing game. I mean, at the end of the day, Michigan only ended up with something like 90 rushing yards on 30 carries. But they just didn't have to care about the running game because Shea Patterson was slinging it around in some pretty nasty weather in Bloomington on Saturday. So I think at the end of the day, you just kind of tip your cap to Michigan and you say, and like Tom Allen said, you got to flush this one down the toilet. You got to throw it in the trash can because Indiana still has 2 very, very important games coming up that I'm sure we'll touch on in a few moments here.
Absolutely. And we touched on Watt Fillier not playing. And I would like to also talk about the offense because we talked about the defense in detail and giving up 39 points at home is always unacceptable. So rightfully so, we've talked about the defense, but the offense didn't score for basically 2.5 quarters 2.5 quarters. Like for more than half the game, the offense was shut out and looked abysmal doing so. And it's not, we can't just chalk it up to injuries, right? It does in fact coincide with the fact that Stevie Scott went out and Ty Freifogel went out and might have been in a 3-play existence there in the second quarter. And then all of a sudden our offense was doing nothing. You can add that to the list of things, but that can't be the only reason why the offense decided that it could not move the ball down the field. Am I right?
Yeah, I would agree. And the thing is, it sort of does matter, like Watt Fillier not being there and Ty Freifogel getting hurt and Stevie Scott getting hurt. You can only take so many shots before your offense ultimately starts really struggling.
Yeah.
I think some of it was honestly Kalen DeBoer, IU's offensive coordinator, having his worst game of the season. And look, make no mistake about it. if you're ranking the reasons Indiana has 7 wins at this point, Kalen DeBoer is near or at the top. But with that said, you can still have a bad game. And I think Kalen maybe bit off a little bit more than he could chew, especially early on. Some of those play calls that worked in the first quarter also involved Peyton Ramsey getting hit. And it also involved the offensive lineman getting put under a lot of pressure. And I think that wore down Indiana to some degree in the second quarter and then in the second half. So that's something where I wonder if Kalen DeBoer himself is going back to the drawing board and saying, hey, maybe I need to get the ball out of Peyton Ramsey's hands a little bit faster. Maybe we need to get the running game a little bit more involved, something like that. Maybe get Stevie Scott involved more in the passing game. I was a little bit surprised that, it didn't seem like he featured too much. He only had 1 catch in that game on Saturday. So I think Kalen DeBoer, okay, he's been awesome, but against Michigan, I think he struggled a little bit.
Yeah, and Andrew, you got anything to add to that?
No, I think Nathan made some good points. Realistically, it just comes down to who's playing who. Like, Indiana is a most consistent, mostly of 3-star recruits, and Michigan's been a top defensive team for many years now, top defensive program with Jim Harbaugh, and even before that. So it just comes down to that, really.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say. I mean, if you get a bunch of 3 stars versus 5 stars, I'm going to take the 5 stars. It just, like Tom Allen said, it comes down to depth, and IU didn't have the depth that they needed to pull out the victory.
Yeah, Don Brown really kicked Kalen DeBoer's butt this game, and that was quite obvious through one half of that game. Anyways, we're going to move on from that slightly depressing game and move on to a less depressing subject in who won the week. So, Nathan, who won the week this past week in IU sports?
Indiana's had a pretty successful few weeks here. The volleyball team won Senior Day on Sunday. The women's basketball team has continued their undefeated run, and they're at a program all-time high, number 17 in the AP poll. But I'm going to go with the men's soccer program. It's postseason time. It's, do or die time. And the Hoosiers advanced in the NCAA tournament with a 3-0 win over Kentucky. What a shock. Indiana continues their postseason superiority over the Wildcats. India 3-0 win on Sunday in Bill Armstrong Stadium, and Victor Becerra scored a hat trick and was named the National Player of the Week for his accomplishments. So IU now moves on, and they face UC Santa Barbara next Sunday at noon in Bloomington. If you're around, you should go. It's an NCAA tournament home game. Pretty great experience, not gonna lie. Would highly recommend it if you haven't gone before. Hopefully the weather cooperates, and if it does, there aren't too many better Big Ten sports experiences. So I would highly recommend it. And if IU wins, they advance to, I believe, the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament.
Yes, they do. Andrew, have you been following the men's team at all with soccer and on campus, or?
Not really. Probably I should be doing it a lot more. Just been busy with a lot of stuff. But on the Hoosier Sound-Offs, we try to cover a lot of the other sports that we can, and I think we've done a good job of covering soccer, highlighting their games, their offensive firepower, what they had, especially with Victor Becerra scoring a hat trick in their last game. So I think this game is going to be really interesting to see if the quest for 9 continues.
That game is on Big Ten Network, by the way, if you cannot attend, or if you want to stream it in your cars as you're driving around America during Thanksgiving. Don't watch it while driving, but maybe like your friend or a family member
Nathan
can have it on.
Yeah, there's laws against that. I don't think you're allowed to watch your phone and drive, especially where I am. That's the new law. Anyways, all right, moving on from that. Oh, and as always, make sure you listen to our Hoosier Sound Offs. Andrew talked about that, but we do a lot of work behind the scenes for those, and we'd really appreciate it if you go and listen to those.
Long
hours of 30 minutes of trying to recap things. Anyways, moving on. So Louisiana Tech and Indiana basketball, the men's team, not the women's team, played last night. And our Hoosiers were victorious in a triumphant 88-75 victory, and what was definitely the best first half of basketball I've seen IU play in quite a long while. This is not an Louisiana Tech team to scoff at. I think they're 89th in KenPom, or were heading into last night. And that's a good team. That's higher than 3 other Big Ten teams going into last night. And we ran them off the court in the first half. I think we were up by 22 at one point. We ended up winning the game by 13. So I'm going to pass it off to Andrew here. What are your overall thoughts on last night's kind of easy victory against Louisiana Tech?
I wouldn't say it was easy. Let's be honest. It's IU basketball. It's never easy. To sum it up, hey, I'm being completely honest there. To sum it up, it was a tale of two halves. IU came out great. First defensive possession, guys were moving their feet on closeouts, hands up, being active.
Right.
Really liked what I saw in Trace Jackson Davis early on defensively. Offense was going. What happened was they tried to Louisiana Tech tried to double up the post a lot, and Trace Jackson Davis, Joey Brunk, they were all reacting to it quickly, finding guys for the open buckets. Mm-hmm. And then they came out to a press, tried to get IU off guard. I think IU, for the most part, handled that well. And then they Tech switched up to a 2-3 zone, kind of a high moving 2-3 zone. And IU was very disciplined, took care of the ball, found the open gaps, had Joey Brunk about the mid-range of the paint area, found him for a nice few layups. And then also had some work in baseline action with either Justin Smith or Jackson Davis. But then once you get the ball inside, thought the post players did a really good job of reacting to the defense, letting the defense come to them, and then finding guys to open three. Devontae Green had a lot of wide open looks when they went to the zone, just off of basic ball movement. And I thought last night the offense looked really good for the first time in a long time. Now the second half, many things happened. It was just they came out like they were up by 20, 25 points, and I felt like they were just kind of easy going it. There were a lot more calls, I believe, in the second half, so the game kind of slowed down there, and it gave Tech a chance to get back into the game. And Archie Miller was not happy about that in the press conference. He still believes that this team is not – they have a long way to go defensively.
Yeah, it kind of felt like seeing a football team go into a prevent defense for the entire second half, because Indiana had that 16-point lead at the break, and it just seemed like it looked really slow and uncomfortable. And Indiana fans, just based on seeing their Twitter reaction during the game, as we were on the Indiana HQ Twitter account, those IU fans were like, hey, like, Indiana's got to wake up. Indiana's got to find a spark. The Assembly Hall crowd is a little bit quiet. But at the end of the day, IU won by 13 points. So it's like, a lot of stuff happened, but Indiana kept Louisiana Tech at arm's reach for the entirety of the ball game. I'm going to take a positive look at this. I know the second half wasn't great, and Archie Miller made that very clear in his post-game press conference. The turnovers, the dribbling, just those two things were enough to make him try to pull his hair out. But for me personally, Louisiana Tech's a top 100 team. They came in pretty confident, one of the best defenses around in college basketball so far, at least through the first handful of games that they've played. Yep. And Indiana lit them up in the first half. And for me, it's almost like I got a glimpse of what Archie Miller wants this program to be consistently every game, every season, in that first half, where the ball was whipping around, no one was dribbling it, quality shots were being taken, and I believe 9 different guys scored in the first half. Indiana didn't have any slowdown, regardless of who was on the court. This was not a one-man band last night. There were 9-10 people that played at a consistently high level. Now, for sure, second half wasn't pretty at all. But if Indiana takes what they did in that first half, and bottles it up, and tries to keep that going the rest of the year, IU, especially in a weaker Big Ten, could really do some good things. But we do have to tap the brakes just a little bit. After the South Dakota State game on Saturday, Florida State, ACC team, consistent tournament team, they come to Bloomington, and that'll be the first real litmus test for this basketball team.
Absolutely. South Dakota State is not a litmus test at all. Actually, we were talking about the schedule getting harder as the season went on, but this is a slight dip in the schedule here with South Dakota State. We'll talk about that in a minute. However, I want to mention Trace Jackson Davis had a great game. Look, I don't, we've been high on him. I think every IU basketball podcast has been high on him. Christmas guys, you name it, they've been high on Trace, and for good reasons. Look, he's a 5-star recruit. He's from the state of Indiana. We love him. He's got a really fun personality on the court. He almost murdered a man last night, but 21-11 against a really good Louisiana Tech team, and your first real game against decent competition is a good sign. And the thing with Trace that I love the most is that all of his shots, every shot he takes, I'm like, okay, that was a good shot. He's not going to sit there and try to cross somebody over and try to take it to a bucket off the dribble when he's not the person to do that, right? He's not going to pretend he's a guard. He knows his role. He plays it really well. And he's always there and he hustles. And he showed that to full extent last night, 21 points, 11 rebounds. God bless him. He's so much fun to watch. And then also Devontae Green had a pretty good night last night as well. I think it was a tale of two halves for him, actually, if we want to talk about that. Because in the first half, I thought he played extremely well. I thought he was taking really good shots. He was facilitating the offense really well. Everybody was in the flow and it was going well. And then in the second half, I thought the ball kind of stopped and people started dribbling the ball more and things slowed down. And Devontae was maybe a culprit of that in the second half. But in the first half, he came off the bench and immediately went on I think it was a 10-2 run. And it was oh, this is great. The train is moving down the tracks here, folks.
Well, and when you were talking about Jackson Davis, Matt, his contributions came in the second half when IU really needed it. He had 17 and 7, I believe, in the second half alone. And without those points and rebounds, Indiana either wins that game in a nail biter or very much possibly loses to the Bulldogs without Trace Jackson Davis's stats and accomplishments in that second half. So that's pretty impressive, right? For an 18-year-old to kind of understand that his team is slumping a little bit, and then he elevates his game to help IU overall. That was I think it felt like a big sort of growth moment for Trace Jackson Davis, especially considering now you're going to have some elevation in the difficulty in your competition. So I was impressed. And like you said, man, I totally agree. He knows his limitations. He's not going out there trying to be the NBA version of the Big Ten version of Karl Anthony Towns or Joel Embiid, where he's crossing guys over, shooting fadeaways. He's not doing that. He knows what he's good at. He continues to improve. I think his toughness is underrated as well. And all in all, Indiana has a really nice find in Jackson Davis. But again, it's not a one-man band. Like you said, Devontae Green had his moments, Al Durham as well. And Indiana didn't even have Rob Finney last night. So, I don't think they've had a full roster in 2 years or something. But
it's 50-some games at this point that we haven't had a full team. It's annoying.
So Saturday, I guess it's possible that Indiana breaks that streak. I guess you got to tune in to find out.
Absolutely. You got any finishing thoughts, Andrew, on the game?
Yeah, I got a couple. Trace Jackson has really done a great job so far this season, fitting in with the role on his team. His role is basically going to be get inside, score, get to the free throw line. Currently on the year, he is averaging almost a double-double at 15 and 8.8 rebounds per game, while also shooting 71% from the floor, 75% from the free throw line. He's 34-45 from the free throw line in 6 games. And after I was working at Assembly Hall last night very late, I stumbled across the records book, and I was looking for free throws made in a season. So Trace is currently at 34 free throws made on the season. Mm-hmm. The record for the most is 249 by Don Schlunt from the 1952-1953 season.
Okay.
So basketball is not about a stat-driven game, but hey, that could be an interesting stat, seeing Trace Jackson make that many free throws in a season.
That's true. And wouldn't that be such a heel turn from last year, right? To go from, oh God, we're bottom, 100 teams in free throw rate to, we broke our record for most free throws. We had to broke our record for most free throws made in the season. That would be a wonderful problem to have. But yeah, look, synopsis of the game last night. Trey Jackson had a great game. The first half was fantastic, and then they went into the locker room and came out the second half, but they forgot that they had beer and pretzels in the locker room celebrating that first half, and the refs had to help them out a little bit to work off that halftime meal. Anyways, moving on. we're gonna keep in the realm of basketball. And we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming games this week. So on Saturday, we play San Diego State, and that's going to be our first game. And then on Tuesday night, when we're supposed to have the podcast at 9:00, when we're supposed to be podcasting, we're going to be playing Florida State, which means this is the first time I'm mentioning this, and you guys should get to know this, but we're going to be moving our podcast next week till Wednesday. So make sure you look out for that. So first off, let's start out with the Jackrabbits. Right, that's South Dakota State's mascot, right? Okay, cool. All right, with Jackrabbits, do either of you actually care about anything about South Dakota State? Because they're not good. But
so here's the deal. Well, and Rob makes a good point in our YouTube chat here. Archie wants nobody to dribble, and it's not just Trace Jackson Davis, and he wants guys to get to the free throw line. And ideally, Indiana does that against South Dakota State on Saturday. And look. The Jackrabbits, I think a lot of people have heard of South Dakota State in recent years, and rightfully so. They've been a very solid program. One of the best mid-major teams in college basketball in all seriousness. And as you just mentioned, Matt, Mike Daum is a volume scorer that was on their team the last few years, but he's moved on. So South Dakota State's going through a little bit of a rebuild this season. They have a new head coach. TJ Otzelberger moved on to UNLV. That's not something you can order at a restaurant, although I'm sure if he does well, Otzelberger will be one of the most popular Vegas food items. Eric Henderson has taken over for South Dakota State, and so far this year, the Jackrabbits are 5-3. Again, 3 losses. Not shameful. There's no shame in losing to USC. They went to Los Angeles and lost by 18. They lost at Nebraska by 17. They lost to Arizona, who was a top 25 team. They only lost by 7 points there. So it does seem like they are progressively getting better. But again, it's not the same team that you may have seen in previous years. They're hovering around the 200 mark in the Ken Pom rankings. So all in all, IU's just got to focus on IU. At the bottom line is if the Hoosiers play well, if they don't, look too far ahead to Florida State or Wisconsin or whatever, they just take it one game at a time. They'll be all right. Keep an eye out though for guys like Doug Wilson. He's a freshman. He's averaging 16 points a game. Brandon Key's a senior that has a lot of winning experience under his play. He's averaging 12 points a game for South Dakota State as well. But again, all in all, I expect Indiana to be a 15 to 20 point favorite for this game, and I expect them to win by about that much on Saturday.
Andrew, anything else to add?
Yeah, South Dakota State averaging 76.8 points per game compared to IU's 90.2 points.
Nice.
So margin is very big there. IU's giving up 65 points. The Jackrabbits 72. What I'm looking for this weekend, other than the Purdue game, because I'll be covering that one. Shout out Rob to go into South Dakota State game. Appreciate you. One of the things I'm looking for this weekend is this going to be the game that IU comes out and plays 2 halves, making a statement, shutting a team down early, and not letting a team like the Jackrabbits, 5-3 record, pretty solid, still a pretty solid mid-major team, to coming into Assembly Hall and upsetting the Hoosiers. IPFW did it a couple years ago. Indiana State did it.
We don't talk about that.
There's an upset looming. I just have to hope that IU can come out and play 2 solid halves. Something can happen this season, and Saturday it could be it.
Yeah, well, let's hope that is not the case. This is knock on wood, everybody, while you're listening to the podcast. And hopefully Rob Finney's back for this game so we can get him into a little bit more of a game shape. Before we talk about our next opponents, which are the Florida State Seminoles, which are down in my neck of the woods down here. Look, Florida State's a really good team. They've been receiving votes. They were the highest vote getter that didn't make the top 25 poll this week, which if they don't lose this week during the tournament season, they will be ranked going into Assembly Hall on Tuesday. So the Seminoles are led by Devin Vassell. He's their 2 guard, and he averages 12.3 points per game, 4 rebounds a game, and about 1.2 steals per game. And overall, FSU's much like IU in that their scoring is very spread out. They don't have a dominant scorer. They don't have somebody like who they had Dwayne Bacon a couple of years ago. If you're following your college basketball intently, they don't have somebody who's going to go off for 20 or 30 points a game, but they have 4 guys that average double digits points per game, and then they also have 3 guys that average more than an assist per game. So that's a really good stat to have on your team. They're very athletic, and they can guard. They switch a lot, and they're very athletic. So this is going to be a tough matchup for the Hoosiers. I'm going to hand it off to Andrew first. You got any general thoughts on Florida State, and are you worried at all about Assembly Hall not being the fortress that it usually is?
I'm always worried about that. Anytime IU plays a game, I always just have that back in my mind, like, okay, things could all go wrong here. Crowd-wise, actually, for a Thanksgiving game this past week, the crowd actually did a decent job. They showed up, especially on the home fan side. When it comes down to the Florida State game, it's going to be their first true test against a quality opponent in Florida State, and people have been people I know have been giving IU a lot of grief about their schedule so far. But
Sure.
it comes down to, what does the tournament committee want you to get in? Last year, it was based off a number of wins, and IU just adjusting to that system. So this will be their first quality true test. Like you said, Devin Vassell, 12 points a game. Rebounding, they average 37 rebounds a game. So IU, it's going to be a rebounding battle, I think, if IU can out-rebound them and get enough defensive stops, which what Archie Miller preaches, and open the floor for guys like Devontae and Trace to have another big games. It can be a good game on next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Also hoping to see that IU has their first game in a long time, that everybody is back and healthy.
Yes.
Don't have to play necessarily everybody tons of minutes, but it'd be nice to see everybody come back and just be dressed.
Yeah,
exactly. Fair enough. I mean, guys, Florida State this year has 7 guys averaging over 20 minutes a game. I mean, Leonard Hamilton, who's one of the most tenured coaches in college basketball, I believe this is his 18th or 19th season at FSU. He does not hesitate to play multiple guys. And that's where, Matt, I kind of agree with you. There are a lot of similarities there between Indiana and Florida State. They're a balanced team. I'm looking forward to seeing their game coming up this weekend against Tennessee. They play each other on Friday. Tennessee's a top 25 team right now, so IU's going to have a chance to get some scouting. It's a neutral site game in Florida, but IU's going to have a chance to see Florida State take on a solid opponent. Ideally, Indiana takes care of business against South Dakota State, has a full strength roster going into that Big Ten ACC Challenge game on Tuesday, and then things get fun, and then Indiana's got a slew of tough games against quality opponents. Talk about Wisconsin coming up, and then UConn, and this is in no particular order.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting. But Florida State, you can't look too far ahead. They're going to be a very feisty, tenacious opponent. They did lose at Pitt to start the season, so this isn't Duke coming to town like we've seen in recent years. And Florida State is going through a little bit of a transition this year. After seeing a few guys graduate and move on to the next level.
Right.
But again, it's going to be a tough matchup. I would not be surprised if Florida State came to Bloomington as a favorite on Tuesday, especially if they beat Tennessee this weekend.
Yes, that's right. They do play Tennessee this weekend in a highly anticipated matchup there. One last thing about this Florida State game is going to be interesting to see. As you know, and Archie's talked about this multiple times, we talked about it on the podcast as well. We like to play with 2 big men, right? Like we like to play Joey and Trace out on the floor at the same time. Florida State likes to go small. Florida State has freshman center and Balsa Koprivica, who's from he went to Monteverde Academy in Florida here in the Orlando area. He's a 7-footer, but he only plays about 12 minutes a game, and that's their highest center usage on the game. They have a backup that plays about 9.5. And the rest of the game, they're playing forwards as 6'8" guys, 6'9" guys at the center. So what does Archie do? Is he going to see him keep both big guys out on the floor at the same time? Or are we going to see us go small and play Trace at the center more to match up with them? And so it's going to be interesting to see what Archie does in those situations.
That's going to be interesting. And I'm happy you brought that up, because if all of you listening want to keep an eye out, we're going to have an article this week about some of the more successful lineups that Indiana has used this year. So, just stay tuned for that. Check out Indiana HQ on Twitter and on social media to see that see that article drop before the South Dakota State game on Saturday. Indiana has been pretty flexible so far this year. If Florida State goes small, I don't think Archie Miller will hesitate to play 3 guards if necessary.
Absolutely. And I've been dying to see the 3 of not Armand out on the court, but Al, Devontae, and Rob out on the court together. Yes, the 3 of them out in the court together would be fun to watch, because they 3 of our 4 best players. Anyways, moving on. And speaking of keeping clothes on and putting everybody in clothes, we have a T-shirt giveaway. And remember, Nathan just talked about checking us out on Twitter. So go to our Twitter, go to Indiana HQ, and that's at Indiana HQ on Twitter, and go like and retweet our, I think it's our tagged post on Twitter. And there's a giveaway for a free T-shirt. So go ahead and check that out over on the official. Anyways, moving on, we have Purdue on Saturday. That's Saturday the 30th at 12 p.m. on ESPN2. The ESPN matchup predictor currently has IU as 63.9%. The line, as of speaking right now, is 7 in favor of Indiana, and the over-under is 56.5. The Purdue this season has beat Vanderbilt, Maryland, Nebraska, and then at Northwestern, and then lost at Nevada, TCU, Minnesota, at Penn State, at Iowa, Illinois, at Wisconsin. So they've had a rough season. I think we talked about going into this year. I think I said that this game was going to be a loss in my prediction at the beginning of the year in that podcast. We assumed that Rondale Moore would have a great year and that Elijah Sindelar would have a great year. Of course, both of them have been dealing with injuries this season. But yeah, it's fair to say that the seasons for Indiana football and Purdue football swapped this year. Am I not correct here in this statement?
Yeah. No, I would agree. And it's one of those things. I thought Purdue was going to already have bowl eligibility clinched by this game. Yet here we are talking about, like you said, Matt, the swap, the flipping really of the 2 programs this year. You talk about the injuries with Purdue, man. Sindelar has been banged up. He's got a collarbone that he's out for the year. So Indiana's probably going to see Aiden O'Connell, at quarterback. Their second string quarterback, Jack Plummer, broke his ankle. I mean, it's been pretty tough to watch. Aiden O'Connell is going to be the quarterback for Purdue on Saturday. They've had other injuries too. You talk about Marcus Bailey, Lorenzo Neal, Rondale Moore as well, and there are others. It's been a really tough ride for the Boilermakers. But again, like you said, Indiana's a 1-score favorite. So the odds makers are expecting this to be a close game. And it's a rivalry game. So you better believe, unless there's a real miracle, or unless Daryl Hazel is coaching, it's going to be lopsided. Or it's going to be a close game. It won't be lopsided. Purdue's got a tough offense. Even now, O'Connell come in and he's done an all right job. He's he's completing passes at a 65% rate. He's got 5 touchdown passes, a 125 passer rating. Purdue's got some good running backs as well. King Derouet, I believe. Doru. Unfortunately, there are a lot of vowels in that last name. But he's a good running back. Don't take away from that. He's got 7 touchdowns on the season. They run a few other guys too. Alex Horvath. You might see Jackson Anthrop get the ball too. And then David Bell. I mean, what an outstanding freshman wide receiver this guy is. And this is year 1 for him. He's got 77 catches on the year in his first season. 6 touchdowns, 900 receiving yards. I mean, my goodness. I hope we get to see a freshman versus freshman contest all afternoon on Saturday when Andrew and I are there. I think Indiana's going to stick Tywan Mullen on David Bell, and my gosh, talk about a matchup of two future NFL players. That's going to be really interesting. I think this is going to be a close game, you guys. Logan Justice will probably come into play at some point. We'll see how it goes, but IU's got 8 wins on the mind, and that would make fans extremely happy if Indiana finds a way to get it done.
Absolutely. Andrew?
All right, couple of things. Real fast, I think this, it obviously is. This is a must-win for IU. I mean, you're coming off back-to-back losses, and under Tom Allen's tenure at IU, not beating their rivals, haven't won the bucket back. So this is obviously a must-win. They don't have to have the added pressure of getting to a bowl game this year. They've already clinched a bowl game. But then also, treading that way, you can't be looking ahead to the bowl game. And I don't believe any of them are. It's Purdue. A lot of the seniors at press conference on Monday spoke very highly of this is a must winnable game. They have to win this game. No excuses about it. And it's going to be very key that they get off to a hot start, because I was there my freshman year 2 years ago for that game at West Lafayette when Lego started. First pass of the game, he threw a pick, and that crowd was nuts. I mean, unbelievable for a Purdue IU game. Their crowds was way louder than ours ever could be, because we can never fill the stands. But anyways, it's going to be very key to get a hot start. You have to control David Bell and IU's man-to-man coverage. And Kane Womack spoke very highly of David Bell. He creates a lot of separation on the deep balls as well as underneath. So with his speed, it's going to be very important that IU knows where he is at all times. Reese Taylor is probably going to get some more action this week. Their coaches are spoken very highly of him. So it's going to be interesting to see what this game is going to be like, because if Purdue had all their players, this honestly could go either way. Like, it's a coin flip. With Rondale Moore, Elijah Sindor, all those guys, they could have a totally different season. But you play with who you have. Matthew Bedford and Stevie Scott, still up in the air about that. I'm going to attend Tom Allen's availability tomorrow, I think, to see if there's any update on that. I think he said WAP should be good. So that's that. So get WAP back. So it's going to come down to, like Nathan said, I think it can come down to Logan Justice sealing the game for IU, getting the bucket back. That's my overall thoughts. So it's going to be looking like a good game, and also it's going to be an elemental game, as predicting a monsoon weather like on Saturday. So it's going to be interesting, and I get to be on the field for that. So that's fun.
Well, and one other guy I do want to mention, as we have talked about pretty much every Purdue offensive weapon except for tight end Bryson Hopkins. And if you don't know this guy's name, YouTube him, Google him, or whatever right now. He's projected to be one of the first tight ends taken in the NFL draft whenever he declares, unless he's a senior, in which case it would be next year. I don't know off the top of my head. But this guy has at least 5 catches in 5 of his last 6 games. He had 8 for 127 and 2 touchdowns last week in Madison against a very tough defense in the Badgers. Indiana limited Penn State tight end Pat Freiermuth a couple of weeks ago. They're going to have a similarly, strenuous, tough effort against Hopkins on Saturday. And look, Purdue, if you got to guard David Bell, you got to guard Bryson Hopkins, and you got to limit the running game, they can still give Kane Womack, and I'm sure they are, a lot of things to think about and a lot of nightmares until Saturday. That's for sure.
Yeah, we talked about David Bell a lot, but can you imagine having David Bell on this Indiana football team in this receiving corps? Could you have imagined that? Because, oh my, him and Watt together would have been a lot of fun to watch. Anyways, that's boo Purdue.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Hopkins is a senior, so he's going to be in the 2020 NFL draft. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes. So the NFL fans, watch out for him, because he might be on your team next year. Mm-hmm. Anyways, moving on, we're going to do the S&P, run through the S&P Plus real quick. So overall, 22 for IU. We were 20 last week. Purdue is 62. So that's a considerable gap between the two of us on SP Plus. Offense is 15, was 13 last week. Purdue's 54th. Defense is 40th, was 34 last week. And Purdue's is 79th. And special teams is 22, was 13 last week. So that's a drop. And then Purdue is 57th. Offense, they average 24.5 points per game, 375 yards per game, 300 pass, 75 rush, 300 yards rushing. They'd be like Georgia Tech. Anyways, and then defense allows 29.4 points per game, 428 yards per game, 235 pass, 193 rush. So hopefully we have Stevie Scott back for this game because Purdue's rushing defense has been lackluster all year long. I think that has a lot to do with, as the aforementioned, injuries on their defensive line, and the fact that they're so afraid they're going to give up a ton of yards in the passing game, that they can't stack the box as much as they want to. Is that fair to say?
On that note, Matt, it's not just because, a lot of people might remember Purdue faced Wisconsin on Saturday, and Jonathan Taylor had a big game against them. It's not just the good running games that are gashing Purdue. Yeah, Northwestern put up crooked numbers against the Boilermakers, and Northwestern has a pretty bad offense, almost like historically bad for Big Ten standards. And other teams like Illinois. And even Maryland, who really struggled in the passing game against Purdue, still ran for nearly 200 yards. They got blown out, but they still put up nearly 200 rushing yards in that game. So if Stevie Scott can't go, you need Ronnie Walker and Samson James to step up. Those are guys who are number 2 and 3 on the depth chart. Tom Allen's preached next man up consistently throughout the year at various positions. Indiana's had to tap in to those reserves all year. And it will probably have to happen again on Saturday.
Absolutely. And the people to look out for on Purdue's defense, by the way, if you're just talking about names that you might see a lot on Saturday, or hopefully not see a lot on Saturday, is Ben Holt, the linebacker. He has 104 total tackles. That is 51 more than the second person on Purdue. So just like we saw with Joe Bacci in Michigan State, he's a linebacker that is going to basically be in on almost every single play from scrimmage. And then as far as defensive ends go, you're going to look at the really, really hot prospect in George Karlaftis. He's from West Lafayette. He was a fringe 5-star recruit last year for Purdue, the highest recruit that they've gotten in years. And he has shown out this year. He has 6 sacks so far this year, which is really good for a freshman defensive lineman. And then as far as the secondary goes, Navon Mosley is a safety. He has 50 total tackles. He doesn't have an interception on the year, but I think he has 1 forced fumble. But those are the names you're going to have to look out for as far as Purdue's defense goes. And then their kicking game, they have J.D. Dillinger, who's 32 of 32 on extra points. So he's not going to be missing an extra point most likely. And then he's 11 of 13 on field goals, and 1 of 2 from the 40 to 49 range. So he's a pretty good kicker. We're not going to expect him to make, a longer than 40-yard field goal, but when Purdue gets down into the red zone and they get stopped by the IU defense, we can probably expect him to drill the field goal. Any last thoughts on the Bucket game, and then we're going to go into predictions for it. So,
Nathan, you can start.
Well, Andrew mentioned the importance of starting fast. Those defensive ends that Purdue's got, Karlaftis as well as Derek Barnes, they're going to pin their ears back and come after Peyton Ramsey if Purdue gets ahead and they force Indiana into 3rd and longs. So to me, the 2 keys to this game are take the lead and stay on schedule as far as your downs and distances are concerned. It does help having Whop Phillier back, at least all indications seem that way. But if Indiana falls behind a couple touchdowns, those DNs, Barnes and Karlaftis, they're going to come after Ramsey, and that could spell trouble.
Yeah, great point. When it comes to the offensive line, especially if Matthew Bedford is out, I believe they said they're shifting Caleb. See if I get his name right. Caleb Jones. I tweeted out wrong. Caleb Jones over to left tackle, and Devondre Love
Yes, at right tackle.
Come in at right tackle. So you were spot on. You got to protect Peyton Ramsey. Got to protect your quarterback. But
always.
Yeah, always, exactly. And you spoke about Ronnie Walker and Samson James, especially if Stevie can't go. Those guys have to show up and play. This is going to be a game for IU that it's going to test them mentally, show their mental toughness to go into a game against a 4-7 Purdue team and still have to come out with a win. I think this honestly makes or break your season. I mean, you can't, even with the bowl game, the bowl game is very important, but you can't lose to your rival, especially when IU's having the season that they are having.
Absolutely. I agree with that sentiment. So as far as my prediction for this game goes, I'm assuming, again, like we've all talked about, it's going to be a close game. Like all rivalry games, you just kind of throw out the records when they go into it, right? Because a lot of emotions tied up into it. You spend all year going, don't talk about that team. But yeah, I do think the Hoosiers will pull it out, probably something like 30-23 over Purdue. We'll hit that 30-point mark that Kalen DeBoer likes to hit for that extra bonus of his. But yeah, and this season we've seen on the road, the Hoosiers haven't really been able to pull away from teams. They kind of keep them around, like a Maryland, for instance, and that game. So I would assume that Purdue is going to keep it close. But I think we'll eventually get that bucket back and be victorious. How about you, Nathan, Andrew?
One thing to watch out for, first of all, I'm predicting an IU win. I think they go into West Lafayette and get the bucket back. I'm going to go with, it's going to be an interesting set. My over-under is going to be 2 trick plays by Purdue. I think Purdue and Jeff Brown's very creative in the offense. They threw a double pass against Wisconsin. So look for that to be a major part of the game on Saturday.
I'm gonna take the over on that. Andrew, do you want to give us a score?
Oh, I didn't give you a score. I'm gonna have to go with. I think it's gonna be a low scoring bout. I think I'm gonna go with like 24 to. I'm gonna go 24-21. Logan Justice comes in, hits a game-winning field goal.
My heart's not ready for that.
That's a bold prediction, but I'm gonna have to go with it.
I'm going the other way, actually. I think it's gonna be one of those sort of cartoonish, high-scoring, back and forth video game type affairs. I'm gonna take over like 3 trick plays. I think Jeff Brom is gonna open up the playbook. Basically throw the whole thing at Kane Womack and Indiana's defense because they don't have any more games after this. Yeah. This is it for Purdue. And it's obviously a rivalry game. I think Indiana will win. I've got 45-38. I think it's going to be one of those really – I know the weather's going to be nasty, but getting I'm expecting Indiana gets Whop Phillier back for this game. I think Indiana's going to use Peyton Hendershot more effectively than they did last week and the last few weeks. He started out hot against Michigan, and then they kind of went away from him, perhaps because of the scoreboard, and Indiana kept falling behind further and further. And remember, Indiana's got a couple seniors on the perimeter, and Nick Westbrook and Donovan Hale. They're not going to let Indiana go down quietly. I think Peyton Randy's going to bounce back too. So Purdue will get their points, especially after Indiana's defense put some weaknesses on tape last week. I think Purdue's going to expose a few things, but I think Indiana will find a way to get the win. Again, high scoring, regardless of how nasty the weather's going to be. But I think Indiana will get win number 8, and that will make a lot of Hoosier Nation very happy.
That'll make me very happy, but neither of those will be very calming in my mind anyways.
What did you say? I missed it, Matt.
It won't be. I won't be calm. I'll be a nervous wreck sitting here on my couch. Anyways, that about wraps it up for our 107th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. And thank you to our live audience. I see you guys in chat for coming out and participating in the chat section. We really appreciate your support. We'll be back next Monday for another edition of the Hoosier Sound Off. News and updates come through Twitter, and subscribe to our show so you don't miss our weekly shows. Most importantly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review on iTunes or Facebook. Tell a friend, share our links. Your support really means a lot, and that's how we grow this podcast to reach more passionate IU fans as yourself. But as always, Thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye.
See ya.